Hello everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about the second phase banner of 3.2. And here are the banners with the 5 stars being Yae Miko and Tartaglia. We already know that Yae and Tartaglia were going to be the 5 stars. I will quickly talk about both Yae and Tartag as units and quickly go over the 4-star units and see if this banner is worth pulling on. First, let's talk about Yae Miko. Yae Miko is a unit that specializes in doing consistent off-field electro damage, kinda similar to like Fischl, but more easier and consistently based on how her E works. Her elemental skill basically makes her spawn these totems that deal electro damage consistently to nearby opponents, where you can leave up to a total of like 3, and her burst basically procs a lightning shot that goes on to the nearest enemy, and if you have 3 on the field with her elemental burst, it basically does 4 total shots, where the initial one is the burst one, or the rest of the 3 are from the totems, where it destroys all the 2 totems and resetting her elemental skill cooldown. So generally how she works, it seems easy and fine, but when looking closely into her kit, she really doesn't add much. She's basically just an off-field electro unit, where other characters just basically do the same job, like Fischl, Beto, and considering that Dendro is a new added element like Quicken, Bloom, she's good in aggravate comps, like considering that she deals consistent off-field electro damage from her elemental skill, but she's not really good in Bloom comps because considering on how her elemental skill works, it's more single target, where there's not really much AoE from her elemental skill, meaning she won't be able to proc the Bloom seeds that are on the field, so she's not really great in those kind of comps. But in terms of like aggravate, she is actually pretty good. The only thing I think holds her back from being a really good electro unit, she already fills a role that other units can already fill, like I said, Fischl or Beto. Fischl, consistent off-field electro unit that can quick swap. Beto, also a good electro unit that can also quick swap that but mainly prioritize her burst. And with Yae Miko, she's a quick swap where you go on field, spawn her E, use her E, spawn the totems, go off field, come back in, use her burst if you have it up, and basically do it again. So 1, she doesn't really add much to compare to other units. 2, she's not really great in a whole variety of comps. Like I said, Bloom, considering Dendro is a really good element added into the elemental system, and the fact that you can't really use her in a lot of the Bloom comps, which are really good, kind of like diminish her pull value. And also 3, it's just the fact that like her burst seems very unuseful in a lot of situations considering on how high cost her burst is, because her burst has an energy cost of 90, so it's gonna be kind of tough to consistently proc her burst off every rotation, because a good portion of her damage does come from her elemental burst, and the fact that it's kind of limiting that if you don't have a good amount of energy recharge on Yae, it's gonna be pretty difficult to proc it every once in a while. So those are the things I think hold Yae back from being a really good electro unit, but overall I think she's decent, she's workable, she's easy to understand, and yeah, she's pretty good as like a quick swap electro unit, even though if you already have Fischl or Beto, you don't really need to pull for her, but for what she is designed to do, she can do it kind of consistently. But she is also limiting in terms of the amount of teams that you can use her in. So that is what I have to say about Yae Miko, and moving on to my boy Tartaglia. So in case you don't know, I am a huge Tartag fan. I basically played him for like the 1.5 years of Genshin before I started using Ayatomar. I believe this is his 3rd or 4th rerun after like a year or so. So seeing him again is an interesting one to talk about, because considering Dendro, he is pretty good. From testing him with Dendro from when 3.0 released, he is pretty good in those team comps, because Tartag's Hydro application is one of the best, if not the best, in the whole game. It's very consistent when you're using him on field, but when looking at his kit, it can be a little difficult to understand at first. Tartag specializes in being an on-field Hydro user, from 1, applying Hydro from his normal charge attacks, and 2, doing consistent and a huge amount of damage from his elemental burst. He is a bow user, but he has a crazy cool skill where once you proc it, he goes into a stance change, where he uses dual blade, that has crazy fast normal attacks that deal Hydro damage and also consistently apply Hydro. He also has his mechanic where it applies a mark, and whenever you land a critical hit on an enemy, it applies something called Riptide. And when every time you hit an enemy, it will proc Riptide Slash, where it deals AoE Hydro damage. Where this mechanic adds more to how good Tartag's Hydro application is really good, because the more you hit these opponents and the more opponents are closer together, the more they will be consistently applied with Hydro. And when quickly talking about his elemental burst, he has 2 stance as well. If you're not in the stance change, when proccing his elemental burst, he does a range attack where it deals AoE Hydro damage, but any opponent that is hit from this specific version of his burst is applied with Riptide, making it easier to go in proccing his elemental skill and using his stance change right away. But whenever he uses burst in his stance change, he basically wields a polearm of Hydro and hits any enemy within a 360 radius, we're basically dealing overall even more damage. And if any enemies are applied with Riptide, it basically procs a version of Riptide Slash where it basically deals a second instance of Hydro damage to the enemies that are marked. The thing mostly that kind of holds him back is understanding his elemental skill cooldown, because the way his elemental skill works is that however long you're in the stance change, it will be 6 seconds long. For example, if you proc his elemental skill and you stay on him for like 9 seconds, then the cooldown will start at 15 seconds. And the longer you stay on, the longer it will be. And it doesn't tell you how long you've been on him, so you have to mentally know how long you decide to be on him for your rotation to be as consistent. Even though there's some things that kind of hold him back from his kit and how it functions, if you can understand how to use him properly, he can be a really good Hydro unit. Especially in one of the best teams in the whole game, which is National, he can fit that role as being a really good on-field Hydro unit. Even though there are other Hydro units that are good like Yelan, Kokomi, Ayato, he still has his place in some team comps, even though he's not really the best in terms of other team comps like Bloom and like Electrocharge, Freeze, etc. He's still really good for the team of like National, but when considering even that, it kind of makes him sound like a one-trick pony in a way, but he's still good in fitting that role for that specific team. But just the way how he works and how other units work, I would say he's more or less universal compared to other units. I would say he's still a good pull, but unless you really want a good unit for like your national team, he's not really a good pull if you want to use him for like other stuff, like Bloom Comms, Electrocharge, etc. And that is my take on the 5-star units, and when looking into the 4-star units, which will be Toma, Heizo, and Layla. Let's talk about Toma. Toma isn't really that good, even though I really like him as a character. He's not really that useful. The only thing he does is basically gives you a shield that scales off his HP, and that's really about it. However, he has become very more useful since Dendro has came out, because considering that one of the reactions from Bloom is Burgeon, and Burgeon can be really good if your pyro application is really slow, he can be that unit that can consistently proc the seeds to create Burgeon, which is what I have been doing, and I actually have been enjoying it. I think he's really good in fitting that role, unless you want to go for like more Hyper Bloom stuff or just straight up Bloom. But in terms of him being the one proccing the blooms to create Burgeon, he is really useful in that role and really easy to build if you just put him on Elemental Mastery and give him a Fafoni's Lance. There may or may not be a new set coming that could be better for him for that specific role, but I'll leave that for a future video. But yeah, in terms of his original niche, he's not really that good, but in terms of his new niche, he can be really good in that role. We go on to Heizo. Heizo is basically an on-field anemo character that consistently deals normal attacks while having a burst that deals AoE anemo damage, and that's basically what he does. He's not really that good. He's just a standard on-field user that deals not really great normal attack damage, and his burst is basically the majority of where a lot of his damage comes from. But considering that a majority of the time he's not really gonna be that useful, and considering there's another unit that could honestly fit that role in way better like Sucrose, I honestly don't recommend building Heizo that much. And when moving on to Layla, Layla is interesting because considering of what we know on how to build her, she's basically a shield unit that deals slight consistent cryo damage, but basically on the way she functions, she's basically a cryo shielder that deals some crowd damage, but is a good user for tenacity sets. Depending on how good her shield is, she can be decent. The majority of her usage is from her elemental skill, and the only way it works is if you have her shield up, and if it breaks, she basically becomes useless because her burst isn't really that great, because her burst is only really mainly useful if you have her elemental skill up, and if your shield breaks, what really does she have? She can't proc tenacity if her skill is gone, and tenacity has a really short cooldown, so unless you give her a huge amount of HP, I think she could be fine, but honestly, just looking at the way how she functions, but I think she has a chance of becoming useful, but we will see when she does come out. So my overall take on the 4 stars for these both banners, is not really great. Honestly, just looking at how Layla is going to be, it doesn't really seem it's going to be that great. Hazel is not really a good Nemo unit, and Toma, even though he has Virgin, he's still kinda niche. So overall, the 4-star units are not great. The 5-star units, I would say, is mainly a more personal choice. I would say if you're rolling in terms of meta, you can skip these both. But if you really like the characters, then by all means roll for them. I personally really like Tartaglia. He's really fun, quick, and his animations are really great. Yae Miko, a really hot waifu, and honestly a really easy unit to use, but at the end of the day, they're not really that much compared to what we have now. And quickly moving over to the weapon banner. Now, I think a lot of people are going to say this weapon banner is kind of good, but honestly, it's not really that great. Both of these weapons are kind of niche. Kawaku's Rarity is good for some characters, but mainly useful on Yae Miko. Polar Star is honestly a pretty good weapon, but when looking at these two, they're not really that great of a pull. Honestly, I think it's only good if you're going for the characters, but even then, there's other choices that those characters can use. So I'd say this weapon banner is a major skip if you are interested in pulling the weapon banner. Weapon banners are never worth pulling on. I will always skip the 4 stars because they're never worth talking about when you are pulling on the weapon banner. But I would say if you are pulling for the characters, then you could consider pulling on this banner if you want to. These weapons can be good stat sticks, but overall, if you're not getting the character, then don't even consider pulling on this banner. And that is my thoughts on the second phase banners. Let me know in the comments of what you guys think of these banners. Honestly, I think some of these banners are kind of lackluster. Like the 5 stars are morely personal choice, 4 stars are kind of meh, the weapon banner is just a weapon banner. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content in the future, check me out on Twitch. The link will be in the description below. That's it for today, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.